Okay, Baruch Hashem, we're continuing in the laws of Shabbat. We are at Melechet Bishul, a very complex Melacha to talk about the laws of cooking on Shabbat. This is our second time discussing it. B'ezrat Hashem, we have plenty more to talk about it. We'd like to dedicate tonight's learning for the Refuah Shlema of Mordechai Merdad ben Evelyn, of Rabbi Baruch ben Zivya, Yaakov Yisrael ben Chana Esther Helen, Shmuel Moshe ben Pnina. If we have any other names, yeah.
Nesrin bat Zarin.
Nesrin bat Sarin. Zarin. Elishava bat Neta. Yichye Michael ben Shlomit. May Hashem send them all a Refuah Shlema. Hashem, very quickly. Okay, so let's jump right back into it. I would like to discuss two main concepts tonight, which are going to have lots of different ramifications. The first one, I believe we mentioned them both last week, but it's worth discussing again. First of all, en bishul achar bishul beyavesh. We hold that once something has been cooked already, if it is a dry solid, so then we hold that en bishul achar bishul, it cannot be cooked again. Once it has been cooked, that means it has gone from being raw to being edible. So then the act of cooking cannot really accomplish anything else with this. So therefore, if a person would desire to reheat something that is dry and has already been cooked, so the halacha will be that will be permissible to do on Shabbat by taking it and putting it on a hot plate or putting it on a blech, and it's not considered to be cooking because of the fact that en bishul achar bishul be'avesh. Now, regarding a hot plate is a little bit better than a blech. A blech means a sheet of metal that goes directly on top of a fire. The reason that a hot plate has an added benefit to it is because people don't really cook on hot plates. They simply use it to reheat. So it doesn't look like you're cooking whatsoever. But we're going to get more into the idea of hot plate versus blech when we talk about B'ezrat Hashem, the laws of before Shabbat, heating things up before Shabbat, which Nether will get to a different time. I want to just focus on what is considered halachically cooking on Shabbat and what isn't. So that's the first thing that we have to talk about. But just to get things clear, Shulchan Aruch holds that even if when you put it next to a fire, let's say you'll have things on the inside that will melt. For example, the Shulchan Aruch gives an example called an empanada. We actually have them till this day. I believe empanada. You're welcome to sit over here if you'd like. You can be the. You don't have to. You can sit over here too. Yeah. So there's a discussion called empanada, which is, as we know, it's a dough that has meat inside of it, and sometimes there could be little bits of fat there that are congealed, and it's possible that some of the fat might melt and might ooze out. The Shulchan Aruch specifically writes that you're allowed to place it keneged hamedura, which means opposing a fire. And although that fire may cause the empanada to have those little pieces of congealed fat melt and ooze out, that's considered to be acceptable, no problem. The Rama argues, but Maran, the Shulchan Aruch that we follow, holds that it is permissible to do that. So we learn an added halacha, which is that even if you have something that is going to become a liquid, right? Because you place it in a spot that is hot. So that would be perfectly fine because when you put it in that spot, it was a solid. So I asked Chacham David Yosef this question. I called him up one time when he was here. And I asked, does that mean that even if, let's say you have something that's, let's say, what we would call congealed fat, on a tray of chicken, let's say, you got some pieces of sauce that they're just congealed, So how do we treat that? Yeah, like what would we say about that? That if you put that on the hot plate, that's going to become liquid, I mean, that's going to be real liquid. It's going to be nice and sizzling and bubbling and what have you. And I asked him, do we still say the same thing about that? He said, yes, we still say the same thing about that. When you put it on the fire, meaning not on the fire, God forbid, not on the fire, put it on the hot plate, it's a solid, and therefore it's perfectly okay to put it on, because like we said, the Shulchan Aruch writes you can put solids keneged hamedura, opposing the fire, which means that it's not on a fire, but it's in a spot that gets hot, and therefore it will melt. He held that's okay, that's permissible to do, because at the time you put it there, it was a solid that was already cooked, like we keep on talking about. It's already cooked foods that are solid. Fine, very good. Yes.
So does that mean like on the hot, like sorry, on the blech, but like not exactly where the fire is under, or you could put it on the blech when the fire is right under it? What do you mean by opposing the fire?
Opposing the fire means, in this case, if you can imagine a fireplace, right? What he means, what he's talking about, is you could put the item in front of a fire, opposite the fire, right? And it would get to the point where it's hot and it would melt. That's what he's talking about. Meaning the empanada inside has the meat and the congealed fat. The congealed fat would melt inside and it would ooze out.
What about for us, like when we're using like a blech? Like
Okay, so let's talk hot plates. Okay, so we would say you could put it on the hot plate, right? And you could, and even though it's gonna melt, so be it. Okay, because that would have the status of opposing the fire. That's how you would Chacham Ovadia would learn that.
But why would an empanada be a problem anyway? It's very dry.
Yeah, but sometimes it has pieces of fat inside of it that are congealed. They harden, and when they heat up, they ooze. They become a liquid. So you might say, well, you can't heat up liquids on Shabbat.
But I've never seen that before.
Well, sometimes it happens. It doesn't have to be an empanada specifically. It could be any kind of food, a chicken, a piece of a hamburger, any of these. Sometimes you have this white kind of fat that.
That's very small.
The point is, it will become a liquid. That's my point. Although it will become a liquid, it's still okay. Clear?
Do Ashkenazim have a different?
Yes, they do. That's what I said before. The Rama argues on this. Correct. But it's important to know that Ashkenazim are more strict in this area. They view that as nolad. They say whenever you have a change in its state of being right now, that is considered something that is a problem to make that change. So therefore, if you know it's going to happen, it would be a problem of nolad according to the Rama, which is a stricter opinion that we don't follow. Yeah.
So like if you're hosting an Ashkenazi as a guest, do they have to be like more lenient? Not more lenient, more strict, and like ask, or like if they're just sitting and we're serving.
You don't have to ask them. You just do what you're allowed to do, and that's it.
Okay, so it doesn't matter if we're doing it and they're eating in our home.
Yes, you should know. In general, in those areas, so there are some who are lenient. My Rebbe, Alav Shalom Rav Belsky, held, which I think is a very straight shooting type of idea. When one of the opinions that are quoted in Shulchan Aruch are expressing their view of the halacha, they view that halacha to be the case for every Jew. They don't view that halacha to be the case for only a certain group. They view this is the general halacha for everybody. Now, happens to be certain groups chose to follow this opinion, that opinion, etc. But the idea that I would be allowed to go and ask, let's say, somebody who follows a different viewpoint than me. In other words, if let's say I think that something is forbidden to do on Shabbat, I don't have the right to go and ask so-and-so whose rabbi says that he's allowed to do it. Hey, can you do this for me because I think this is forbidden to do on Shabbat. I can't go and ask him to do something that he thinks is allowed, right? I think he shouldn't do that. You understand? And vice versa. So in general, if you hold it's allowed, it's allowed. You're allowed to do it. And he's coming to your home. He's relying on you. He's not doing it. And he, by the way, this is an important thing for all of us to know. We're going to talk about this in at more length. Hashem may focus on this, but you should know the very important rule. This rule is really, really, really important because we know that on Shabbat, if a person does a melacha that is forbidden to do, we may not benefit from that melacha on Shabbat. Like for example, if let's say a Jew heats up water for me and makes me a cup of tea on Shabbat. So I'm not allowed to benefit from that because he did something that he's not supposed to do and he did it for me. We're not allowed to drink that tea if he did it on purpose. And even if he did it by accident, we can't drink that tea. Sometimes things happen. Okay, fine, is what it is. But you should know that if, let's say, that he did something that some rabbis think is okay to do, and some rabbis say it's not okay to do, and we happen to follow the rabbis who say that it's not okay, but there are those who say it is okay, then you're allowed to benefit from it. Now, I can't tell you how important this halacha is, because if people would know this, it would save a lot of these shalom bayit questions that happen to come up a lot over here. Okay, for example, we're going to talk about this example a lot tonight, so it's important to know this. There's a big debate amongst the authorities regarding whether or not you are allowed to reheat a cold cooked liquid. For example, a soup. Let's talk about a vegetable soup, a chicken soup, right? You have a cold cooked liquid in the refrigerator. Can I take it and put it in a spot that is so close to the fire, or in our case, a hot plate that is used as a source of heat? May I put it there and reheat it on Shabbat?
No.
The answer is unequivocally no. We hold yesh bishul achar bishul belach, right? Very important to be aware. That is 100% forbidden to reheat that soup on Shabbat, and that is the halacha. We all agree. Everybody follows that. Sfaradim follow that. Ashkenazim follow that. There isn't a single modern day authority that will tell you that you're allowed to do that. 100%. However, originally, when this halacha was being decided by the Bet Yosef, he quotes many rabbis who hold that it's permissible to do that. No less than the Rambam, the Rashba, the Ran, some of the greatest poskim hold that you could take again, very carefully, you have to understand, it's a liquid that has already been cooked, and you want to reheat it. They held it's not called cooking anymore. It's already been cooked. Now, do we follow those opinions? No. Does anyone follow those opinions? No. Okay? However, let's say that there's a Mr. So-and-so who didn't know the rule, or who knew the rule, and he heated it up anyway. Can you drink it? Can you take that soup and put it in your mouth? Yes, you can.
So it's not a
You know why the
juice.
answer is yes? The answer is yes, because it's not like tea. By the case of the tea or the regular water that wasn't cooked, there isn't a single opinion who says that you're allowed to do that on Shabbat. Nobody says you're allowed to take water and heat it up on Shabbat for the first time. There isn't one opinion. It doesn't exist. According to all views, that's cooking, right? There isn't one single view that says that you could do that. Okay, very important to be aware of that. Therefore, according to all opinions, if it was done, it may not be consumed on Shabbat. You have to wait till after Shabbat to enjoy that hot water, at which point it's not even hot anymore. Okay? But that's the rule. However, when there is a machloket amongst the authorities as to whether it may be done by a Jew on Shabbat or not, and we take the stricter road, again, it's not just we, all Jews throughout the entire globe take the stricter path on this, and nobody will heat it up on Shabbat, right? Let's just say, with the exception of Yemenites who follow the Rambam, I don't know if they would do it or not, but let's say everybody on the planet says you cannot do this. Fine. Okay, so we don't do this. But if it was done, at that point already, we would say that if it was done, you may benefit from it, because at that point already, what we call b'di'avad, we would say that the rabbis who said not to benefit from Melacha on Shabbat would not, they wouldn't be strict in a case where there were some who permit a Jew to do it in the first place. Okay, so therefore, is that clear? Yeah, is that yeah? You have a question?
You don't count if one rabbi thought it was okay, or it has to be more than
No, I think as far as I know, even if it's one rabbi,
one.
right?
What you want.
Yeah, but the avad we would rely on it. Okay, good question. Yeah.
Can you repeat the example that you said that we would be able to?
Yes, person goes to the fridge, takes out a cold chicken soup from the fridge, cold vegetable soup from the refrigerator. Again, everybody will tell him, you may not take it and put it on a hot plate right now. That is forbidden to do. Heating up a cold liquid, we hold in halakha, yesh bishul achar bishul belach, which means there is cooking, even though this is already cooked, it is still considered to be cooking when it's a liquid. Therefore, it's forbidden. The fellow went ahead and did it anyway, right? Maybe he didn't know, maybe he did know. Do we call this what we would call Maaseh Shabbat? Is it the same as the person who heated up water for the first time? Or in which case you can't enjoy the water? Or do we say, no, this is different? Why? Because over here, you had the Rambam, you had the Ran, you had the Rashba, great rabbis who said you were allowed to do this in the first place, which we don't hold like. But if it was already done, we would say you could go ahead and rely on them. Understand?
Thank you.
It's a clear concept.
Because sometimes you can be a guest in somebody's home.
That's what I'm saying. That's exactly where this comes up. You can be a guest in somebody's home and he totally blows everything. And now you have to know, is it okay to enjoy this or not? The answer is, in this particular case, being that it's a machloket, you would be allowed to consume the soup, provided that they know the laws of kosher.
I just have a question regarding this. If, let's say, can I ask a goy to put my soup on the blech?
That's a very good
'Cause
question.
that's what I did this.
That's a very good question.
That's what I did on
Okay, that's a
Saturday.
great question. Okay. You know what? If you asked it, let's answer it. So in the same way that that what we just said is true regarding whether or not it would be considered something you could enjoy after the fact that it was done in a forbidden manner, we said that we would rely on the opinions that say that it's permissible to do and therefore you could benefit from it. So the Chida, Maran Chida, and he's quoted by many Achronim, says that you could also rely on the very same Rambam, Rashba, and Ran to tell a goy to put it on the blech.
You can do it.
Yeah,
Thought so.
okay. They actually hold that you're allowed to tell the goy to do it. And again, the reason being is that we for ourselves restrict. We hold it's forbidden. It's asur to do that. You cannot do that if you are a Jew. You may not put that on the blech 100%, or a hot plate cannot put a liquid over there 100%. But says Maran Hachida, he says that being that it's a big machloket, you are permitted to ask a goy to do it. And that there are many such cases that when there is a question of whether or not it's allowed to be done, and we hold that you can't do it if you're a Jew, but to ask a goy, we would be lenient because there are some opinions who say that even a Jew could do it. Yes.
Does the goy have to benefit from the soup as well?
No. Now I want to explain something. While you're on that question is a kind of is a question that is very important to address in a way, because what it assumes is that when a goy cooks something for himself or does something for himself with respect to food, that we're allowed to benefit from it ourselves, right? So that is a mistaken assumption. Even though that is the halacha regarding other things, when it comes to food, it's not so, okay? Important to be aware of that. A goy who, we talked about this when we learned about Amir La'akum, a goy that is doing something for himself that is forbidden for us to do, we could benefit. We spoke about the idea that he could take water out of the well, grass out of the ground, and feed his animal with it. And then if there's any leftover, the Jew can go and benefit from it as well, because the goy did it for himself, right? We spoke about that. But if the goy did it for me, then it's a forbidden benefit. I can't benefit from it. Okay. Now, on the other hand, it's also important to be aware that if a goy does any kind of food melacha for himself, let's say he baked bread for himself, let's say that he cooked water for himself, the halacha is clear that we may not benefit from that goy's melacha that he does for food. For food-related matters, it seems to be the opinion of Maran that when a goy does something for himself with respect to food, being that Jews are maybe a little bit more, what's it called? Maybe nervous or hysteric, maybe we get when it comes to food. So we're afraid that the Jews are going to ask him to do more stuff. So that seems to be the opinion of Maran, except in circumstances where there really, really is a great need, then there's a certain leniency that he gives. But other than that, we're not supposed to rely on goyim doing acts of food making for themselves for us to benefit. I hope that was clear. Is that clear? What? Yes or no? No? Sorry.
I'm good.
You're good? Okay, sorry. So yes, correct. They can't cook for us in general, and they also can't, even if they cook for themselves on Shabbat, we're not really supposed to benefit from it. Yeah. You got it? 100%. Okay, fine. Great. Just making sure. All right. Very good. So we have a very important idea of this machloket. Now, I want to make something clear. Again, this is all provided that the food was already cooked, that the liquid was already cooked, that the solid was already cooked. What would you say to this? Let's say somebody has a roast, but the roast is going to continue cooking while you put it on the hot plate. Okay? So this is an issue. Okay? You can't put that roast on the hot plate unless that roast has already reached the point that it was edible prior to Shabbat.
What about
You understand? What?
Children.
1 second. I'm talking about a person taking a roast out of the refrigerator. He had already cooked it before Shabbat.
And it wasn't.
He wants to heat it up on a hot plate on Shabbat. Okay? Can he do that? So the answer is that you most certainly, if it's a cooked roast, if it's cooked to the point that it's edible, then you could put it on the hot plate. But if it's not reached that point, which I know some people do this, by the way. I know some people that specifically don't cook it all the way because they say that it's going to get heated up more on the hot plate, so it's going to dry it out. Better to leave it a little bit more on the raw side. Well, wait a second. If it's raw, it's not totally edible yet. You have to. You're kind of walking a tightrope. You have to know that this item is edible before you put it on a hot plate. If it's not edible yet, you can't do that. Yeah.
Sometimes parts of it are edible.
Yeah, but you need you're putting the whole thing, not just parts of it on that. Yeah.
Just, let's say the roast is 75% edible, and you put it on Friday before Shabbat starts.
Saying 75% edible or 75% cooked?
There. Yeah, it's like cooked, but not fully cooked, but more.
My question is,
towards the
can you eat every part of that roast?
No, but can you put it on Friday before Shabbat starts, like right before you candlelight, put it on the hot plate, and it's.
So
cooking
that's a
then?
great question. That we're gonna save. We're gonna save for when we talk about Friday stuff. No, that we're gonna save. We're gonna save that because that's a pre-Shabbat question. We have to have a separate thing for that. My point is, you want to put it on Shabbat.
Like after you lit candles.
You lit candles. You want to put it on Shabbat. Can you? Yes or no? So the answer is it has to be edible. If it's not edible, you can't put it on. Yeah, all of it. Yeah.
What if you usually eat like the steak like that, like a little raw inside?
It's edible.
So it's edible.
So it's edible.
fine.
Very
let's say
good.
you have like a ribeye steak that like is a little pink inside, and you're warming it up for Shabbat lunch.
Okay, so again, it's edible. Right now, every single,
Oh my gosh, we
no,
just had.
no, my point is that you have to be able to put every bite of the steak in your mouth
Yes.
right now, as is.
Yeah, well, let's
If
say
the answer-
putting it on the flat, it's going from like a little pink to a little bit more brown. You're cooking inside of it a little bit.
Okay, but the
But it's
point is
still
that's not
edible a little bit
exact.
more.
Right now, it's already fully cooked. That's my point. Right now, it's fully cooked. You can put it on. Okay, but if it's not, again, some people they put it on and it's not fully cooked because they want that additional cook. You can't do that on Shabbat. You understand?
But
Can't
can a
do it.
goy do it
Yeah.
for you?
What? Yeah.
Can a goy do it for you?
No, no,
Like, but it.
no. That no. Yes.
I don't really like roast on Shabbat.
Also, or just hot plate?
Right now, I'm talking hot plate.
Texture.
It's not exactly true. Let's just leave it for hot plates right now.
Okay.
We'll get to the blechs. Hashem. It's definitely more of a lenience. Yeah. Yes.
Now, let's say when it comes to bread, I like my bread crunchy.
Okay.
So if I put it on the hot plate and it's gonna get crunchier so that I eat it,
It's a good
is
question.
that allowed?
It's a machloket. It's a big machloket. It's a good question. Can you
That's
take
why I
bread
prefer-
and make it toasty?
I thought the eight has to be.
So there's a question amongst the poskim if you could take bread and toast it on Shabbat.
Oh, it's
Toast,
fine.
why
Yeah,
it's
meaning
toast?
that's what you're doing, making it toasty,
Yeah,
right? Making it
making
nice
it
and crunchy, right? So that is a machloket poskim. The Ben Ish Chai held you're not allowed to,
Oh my
and
God,
Chacham
this is getting
Ovadia held
bad.
that you are allowed to.
But what,
So
you
there's a
can't put
difference of
your
opinion,
challah
huh?
on the.
You
left?
could, but I mean, if you're leaving
It's
it to
a
the
hot
point
plate.
that it gets toasty, so that's
No,
a.
but usually I put like I have my pots, and I
Okay.
put the challah on top of it.
Okay, yeah, that's
I
not
have, like,
getting
a little
toasty.
blanket.
That's not making it
No, I
toasty.
like it to get
She's taking a slice and she's putting it on the hot plate and it's getting really, really toasty and
Like
Yeah,
crunchy.
but so we have one to
the-
rely on though, right? Because I do this every week.
Make toast. So,
Like I slice the bread and I put it on the
Yeah.
top. They put-
but to make it like real crunchy.
Yeah.
Okay, so the Ben Ish Chai says no. The Hamadi says yes. They have different opinions. The question is there something called? The question is about there's another melacha that we're going to get to called makeh patish, which means hitting with a hammer. And the question is, what makeh patish means is taking something and fixing it to the point where it's perfect, where it's fixing any imperfection that it has. So the question is, does that melacha apply to foods or not? Ben Ish Chai was concerned that it does. So therefore, according to him, he says, you're taking this little slice of bread, you're perfecting it, it's no good. Makeh patish, by food.
But I think
But Chacham Vadia argues and says makeh patish doesn't apply to food, and therefore he held that it's fine. So so if you want to rely on Chacham Vadia, you're allowed to. You have what to rely on.
but I feel like
Okay.
you're changing its status.
That's the
Like
question.
with soup.
That's a good
it's
question.
not you're not changing its status. Like,
Well, you are because you're making it hot.
No, but like
Right?
if you're toasting bread, you're making it into something that it wasn't before. The soup before it was on the blech, before Shabbat, you cooked it and you made it soup. But if you're toasting bread, it's like becoming something else. I feel like you're cooking.
Well, okay.
I don't know, like
There's-
I don't know.
It's not cooking. We hold that once something has been baked. It's a good point. We hold that once something has been baked. Another very important point. Maran in Shulchan Aruch writes. He brings down two opinions, but the consensus is that his opinion is like the opinion that says the following, which is that once something has been baked, then it's not considered cookable again. So, for example, if I take a piece of challah that has already been baked and I want to dip it into a bowl of soup to be able to enjoy it dipped in soup, it's fine. Why? Because we hold in halacha and bishul achar afiyah. There is no concept called cooking after it has already been baked. Okay, clear? So once you have a challah that's baked, we hold that in halacha there is no such thing called cooking after baking, and therefore you could dip your tea biscuit into a hot cup of tea, no problem. Even though, again, we always hold kli sheni doesn't cook, but as you remember last week, we discussed the idea that there are certain things that are considered very easily cooked. Like we mentioned, Tea is something very easily cooked, and that would cook in a kli sheni. And there are those who want to say that these little, pieces of biscuit, tea biscuit or challah might be cooked in those things too. But we hold that these things cannot be cooked because they are already baked, and therefore it's permissible. That is how we hold.
What if you put something like
What?
liquidy in the challah, like maduka?
What if you put something
Like
liquid?
liquidy, like I made a Tunisian challah and I put like tuna and egg, and hard-boiled eggs and olives and maduka and
You mean like putting
inside.
it in the challah?
Yeah, inside the challah, like I put one layer of dough on the bottom, and then the mixture in the middle, and then I put the other layer of dough on top. And like, maybe like,
And what was cooking it? This was
no, I cooked it, but like maybe. a
you
part
meaning
of-
you baked this all
I
together?
did this all together.
Meaning this was a dough,
No.
and then you put this on the dough.
I need
trying to understand.
challah,
Yeah.
I need challah dough,
Okay,
and then this is like one kind of a challah I made.
The
So you-
topping, she put the topping
It's not a
inside
topping,
the
it's not like a
challah.
topping, it's like, it's a mix, it's like.
and then you baked it as is.
I think that is delicious. But like there's
Wow.
some things that are a little bit like liquidy.
Okay, so but you did that before Shabbat.
No, I did it before Shabbat, but like the inside mixture could be a little bit
Liquidy.
liquidy, and maybe part of it might not be altogether 100%
Like the
cooked.
tuna oozes out.
No,
Wow.
it's all inside.
Okay,
but I
so
want, like,
so something
if you-
inside.
if
You know what it reminds me of? It's basically like a jelly donut, right? What would you say to a jelly donut? Can you put a jelly donut on the hot plate? 100%.
I mean, it's
Right?
not exactly.
Let's
the
say it's a
same
jelly
thing.
donut, right? Elijah writes you can
But
put
if
a
it's-
jelly donut on the
But
hot
if
plate.
a part of
Why?
it, if a part of the dough and a part of the liquidy stuff in it is
It's
like.
okay. It's okay. That's what we were saying before, like the
It's
empanada.
fine, like. you
Yeah,
can-
it's good. It's good. It's good. Okay, now. One of the very interesting halachot that comes up over here is the following question. So you have a hot liquid that is starting to cool down. And then you want to reheat it. Can you reheat it? For example, I have this this chicken soup that was on the hot plate. It was then removed from the hot plate. And now I want to put it back on the hot plate. Okay? So this is a very, very important rule for us to understand. The Rama is of the opinion that so long as the liquid hasn't cooled to the point where it's cold, meaning it's still lukewarm, there's no problem with reheating it. We do not follow this opinion. Okay? We do not follow this opinion. Over here, this is where the Sfaradim are super duper duper strict, much more than the Ashkenazi. Okay? Very important to be aware. In this particular case, the Shulchan Aruch expresses himself very, very severely. And he says that even if, let's say, you do the following, his case is a different case, but I want to explain what he's talking about. His case is, I don't remember if we spoke about it last week. If we did, forgive me, but it's good to review anyway. His case is that the person has a pot of, let's say, chalent, and it's been cooking all night, okay? And he wakes up in the morning, surely enough, the pot of chalent is dry. It's getting dry. And now he doesn't want the pot of chalent to be like a rock by the time he comes home from shul. So naturally, he wants to pour some water into it to get it to be a little bit more moist. So the Shulchan Aruch asks the following question. Could this guy go to a separate, independent jug of hot water that he's got? It's a Kli Rishon. So he's got two Kli Rishons now. We remember what Kli Rishon means, right? He's got two first vessels. He's got a vessel that's directly heated up from the fire. That's the chalent pot. He's got another vessel that's directly heated up from the fire. That's his jug of water. That's his little, forgetting the word, kumkum, kettle. Perfect, right? So he's got a little kettle, and he wants to pour from the kettle into the chalent pot, kli rishon to kli rishon. Seemingly should be no problem. The Rama would tell you, A-okay. Why? The Rama goes so far to say, even if the liquid that's in that kettle was hot, but now it's not so hot, it's just lukewarm, and you want to pour it into that hot pot of chalent, no problem. A-okay. Comes along Maran and says no. The minute that you pour, according to one explanation of the Bet Yosef, the minute that you pour out of the kettle, we are concerned that the hot water from that kettle cooled down a little bit, got mixed into the pot, and was recooked in the pot. That's the Kli Rishon, the pot of chalent. Okay? That's what Maran says. So it's a very big stringency. Is it clear what he's saying?
You can't add hot
Clear?
water to any food.
You cannot add hot water to any food that is in a Kli Rishon. Now, obviously, if you take the chalent out of the pot and you move it into another vessel, at that point, that chalent is a Kli Sheni. Now you have a much better time pouring hot water into that. Why? Because Kli Sheni, Eino Mevasher, second vessel, doesn't cook, at least according to most authorities. Okay? So therefore, that would be a much better solution. But what if you don't have that option? Because, right, by the time you get there, by the time you want to serve it, it's already going to be like a rock, and there's no reason to pour any water in there. It's just too impossible to eat. So in that case, there are 3 suggestions that I found, which I'd like to share with you. The first suggestion is simply lift the pot up so it doesn't get cooked that much, and then put it on top of some kind of an insert. That's not going to help you that much, but it does help a little bit. So if you need to buy time, you can simply elevate the pot so it doesn't get that hot. That's one suggestion. Still will have some heat coming at it, so therefore it's still going to stay hot, but it's not going to get as cooked, and it's not going to be as dry. That's suggestion number 1. Suggestion number 2, which is very interesting. Some people don't like cooking with plastic, these plastic bags. So some people don't like them. I understand. But if you're comfortable using the plastic bag, you could fill up a plastic bag with water and have it in the chalent pot before Shabbat. And then if it gets dry, you can puncture the plastic bag on Shabbat and let all the water come out. It's an interesting suggestion. I have never done it myself, but I like to give suggestions. Okay. Now,
I have a question.
yes.
So let's say the water that you were pouring, the kettle you're pouring into the chalent pot is yad solet, so it's boiling hot.
Okay.
You're not going to cook it by pouring it into the chalent pot. Why is that?
So that's exactly what the issue here is, right? You're 100% right. So the Rama is saying 100%, no problem. You're not going to do anything. It's boiling hot. What's the issue? And even according to one explanation of the Bet Yosef, he also agrees with you. And he says, yeah, we're talking about over there in that case, we're talking about where the kettle really cooled off and it wasn't so hot anymore, and that's why it got cooked, which makes a lot more sense. But according to the way Chacham Ovadia Alav Hashalom explained this Bet Yosef based on his own Bet Yosef explanation, the second one, he explains that no, the concern here is that mid-air, as it's getting poured, it's going to cool off. And then as it hits, it gets recooked. That's what he says. So therefore, we're strict. And that's the, now, if you're really stuck and you don't have any other solution, is there what to rely on? Yes, there is what to rely on. Chacham Ben Zion is lenient. But again, ideally, we don't want to rely on leniencies when it's a question of the Oraita. So therefore, that's what we do. A third solution, which we learned last week, the concept we learned last week when we talked about Kli Rishon, Kli Sheni, and all those things. We learned that a ladle that you insert into a pot of soup, or into any pot, is viewed as generally as a Kli Sheni, because you scoop out from the pot, which is the Kli Rishon, the first vessel. The ladle becomes your second vessel, and the bowl becomes your third vessel, provided that the ladle doesn't sit in the pot of hot soup for a long time. Because if it sits in the pot of hot soup for a long time and it starts to boil and whatever in the pot, together with the pot, it gets the status of Kli Rishon. You could use that to your benefit. How could you use that to your benefit? Because if you take your ladle, let's say you have a jug or an urn of hot water, and you take that ladle and you shove it into the urn, you let it sit there for a long time, the ladle will now become a Kli Rishon. You then take that Kli Rishon and put it into the chalent pot. So it's in the Kli Rishon. There's no air. You just shove it all the way down into the chalent pot, and then you tilt it. Did you catch that or no? What?
So you're not pouring it, you're just putting it into.
I'm putting the ladle into the hot water urn. It's gonna become a Kli Rishon because I'm gonna leave it there for 10 minutes. Then I'm going to take it out and then just plunge it into the chalent pot and tilt it. So it's sitting in a Kli Rishon going into a Kli Rishon. It's a good
Trick.
Yeah, it's a good trick. Yeah. These three suggestions are not my own. I got them from the Sefer or Halacha. Very nice discussion of these three suggestions. So gotta give credit where credit is due. Okay, fine. Okay, good. I wanted to discuss a couple of more important points about cooking.
Rabbi, I'm so sorry.
Yes.
Just while we're on the topic of
Yes.
Kli Rishon change.
Yes.
Are you allowed to take cholent directly out of the crock pot?
So there are a couple of things. If everything is totally cooked, right? If everything there has been, it's like Shabbat morning, it's already totally cooked. So then there are a couple of issues. If you want to take it directly, again, this is for Sfaradim only. You want to take it directly from the crock pot, then you're allowed to take from the top. Not allowed to dig.
Okay.
Because it's still on the element, on the heating element. So you could take from the top, that's it.
Okay.
Top, only the top. You can't dig around. You want to mix it and dig from the bottom, you're looking for some pieces of meat, whatever. So then you would have to remove it from the heating element.
Okay.
And Be'ezrat Hashem, we're going to talk about if you want to put it back, what you need to do in order to put it back. Stuff, there's different things that we could do. But you're going to have to remove it, dish it out, and then put it back.
Okay, and then the other thing was, sorry, quickly, this was an argument this past Shabbat. If I left the ladle in it, like you said, and it became a Kli Rishon,
Yeah.
would it be a problem taking it out? It sat in there long enough where it took that status.
Okay.
Is it okay to still use it to scoop out cholent from the top?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That actually makes life better. Yeah. Because if it's a Kli Sheni, so now it's kind of cold, and you're putting that cold stuff back in, that's a question now, which is also okay technically, but yeah, it's actually better. Okay, good. Now, I'll just give you a couple of important points that you guys need to think about as well, which you may not have considered. The halacha says that when you increase the ability for cooking, even if you didn't do anything other than simply increase the ability for it to cook, that's also called cooking on Shabbat. For example, somebody was a little bit excited for the challenge on Friday night, okay? You guys have challenge, right?
Yeah, of course.
Yes.
You eat challenge. I mean, I know all the shuls serve challenge,
We
right?
have Persian
What?
forms of cholent sometimes.
Right, but there's no like gourmet
What
sabzi in
do
a
you
crock
put
pot,
rice
is there?
in?
Is there? No, there doesn't, right? Doesn't
I
exist.
don't
It's
really
chalent in a
like
crock pot. Okay, fine. So let's say they say that that young yeshiva guys, they eat chalent Thursday night, Friday night, and Shabbat day, right? They say that the avrechim, the married guys, they eat chalent Shabbat day, Sunday, and Monday. It's like, different. Anyway, so the person is excited for the chalent on Friday night. Okay, excited for challenge Friday night. Good. So now he opens up the lid of the crock pot, takes a scoop, bites into it. Surely enough, the beans are still hard. Right? Now, what does he do naturally? Takes the lid, puts it back on, walks away. Little does he know that taking the lid and putting it back on is actually helping the cooking process. Because if you don't have a lid, it's going to be a lot harder to cook. The whole purpose is that the lid contains everything, all the heat is in there. So now you're actually aiding so cooking, the covering the lid on something that is not fully cooked is also considered to be an act of cooking. Important to be aware of that. Okay. Now, let's say that you have this one seems like kind of very innocent, but it could be a problem too. You have challah in the freezer. You baked challah in the freezer. You want to heat it up. You're not going to have frozen challah. So you go take out the challah from the freezer and you heat it up. You got to pay attention for one thing. A lot of times the challah has ice on it. Okay. Now, normally speaking, we say, okay, you have a solid, a little bit of liquid or something that's solid, that's congealed, no problem. When is it no problem? When it's already been cooked before. This ice has never been cooked before, right? So that ice has to come off before you put it on the hot plate. You have to kind of hit it off. Somehow just kind of, knock it off so that it shouldn't get onto the hot plate, because that would be an act of cooking. Yes.
You could defrost it.
What?
Defrost it, like just.
Yes, you could
before
defrost it
Shabbat.
before, but I'm saying if you take it directly out and there's ice on it, it's a problem. Yeah.
Right, but that doesn't ask, what if you leave it out for like 15, 20 minutes?
And there's no more ice, then it's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, very good. Just have to watch out for that. Okay, yes.
Let's say you have a pot on the left, and it's like, how the top, the condensation is on the top of the lid.
Yes.
So let's say you take off the lid and some of the water liquid drips onto the black and it makes like that sizzling noise.
Yeah.
Is that cooking it? Because it's already, let's say it's already cooked. Liquid
Right.
from the
Correct. It's not a problem.
stove.
Oh, it's
Yeah.
dry. I always tell them
It's
to
not a
make sure
problem.
your lid is dry.
So what I do, I get very nervous with this stuff too. What I find myself doing every week is I take the lid off, like I'm uncovering some kind of treasure, like this. So it just ends up flying right into the sink or something like that. That's what I end
But
up
like
doing.
getting at it if it fell on the floor.
Yeah, because in that case, first of all, it's not guaranteed going to fall onto your hot plate.
Right.
It might not. So it's already davar she'eino mitkaven. Anyway, the Ramah held, it's not a problem. It's still hot. Now we're strict about it, okay, but when you don't have it in mind, it's not necessarily going to happen. And even if it did, there are some that are lenient, and it's a small amount, and it's it's a very minute thing. So some don't even hold it's a problem to begin with. It's okay. But yeah, I get nervous about it too, so I end up just like this. Yeah. Okay. Good. Okay. Okay. Making sure we got to everything. All right, I think we're good for tonight. Very good. Okay, excellent. So we'll stop over here. Zashem, and continue next week. We have a lot more to talk about. Okay, perfect.
That
Yeah.
I know we said we're not